Thank you for listening to Scandinavian Crimes Podcast. Be sure to check out the episode links and be part of our other social media platforms where you can leave a topic suggestion or even share some of your insights regarding the subject matter of the episode. We will always do our best to provide a well-researched episode, but sometimes due to limited access to information and translation issues, some information can be lost. It is therefore good to do your own research and get a deeper understanding of a case of your own interest. So with that all said, let us start today's episode.
Welcome to another episode of Scandinavian Crimes. My name is Devante, and say hello to my lovely co-host Delila.
Hi.
And on this podcast, we will talk about famous Scandinavian criminals who made their mark throughout Scandinavian history. So today we're going to be discussing the Tistedalen murders. The Tistedalen murders took place in Østfold, Norway, that was once a thriving sawmill industry community. As the 20th century arrived, Tistedalen evolved into a close-knit, working-class neighborhood with various religious groups coexisting harmoniously. However, the tranquility was shattered when a series of brutal murders occurred in 1991 and 1992. Tistedalen became the center of media attention, facing one of Norway's most notorious murder cases. So I want you all to sit back and enjoy the ride, because I know you guys love when we talk about serial killers, especially unknown serial killers or serial killers that are not super talked about nowadays like the US ones are. But grab your tea, grab your snacks, because even though the story isn't super duper long, it's still going to be quite a ride. So listen up as we talk about the Tistedalen murders. It was September 3rd, 1991, in the quiet town of Tistedalen. Åse, Haglund, and Arne Advar Nordby, a pair of elderly siblings aged 78 and 74, were brutally murdered in a way that would shock the entire community. The Nordby siblings, whose bond was unbreakable as their years were numerous, met a tragic end within the very walls of their cherished home. Their bodies bore the cruel scars of multiple stab wounds, each testament to the brutality that had fallen them. As the investigation unfolded, it became evident that the motive was not only a senseless murder, but to also strip them of their belongings, leaving behind a scene of horror and emptiness. The local law enforcement responded with determination, launching an extensive investigation in an attempt to solve the case. However, their relentless pursuit of the truth appeared to be formidable and challenging, causing growing frustration among the investigative team. As the passage of time deepened the mystery, the unrelenting quest for answers led to the unjust suspicion falling upon two innocent individuals who were later released. In a prevailing air of uncertainty, a subtle hint of a lead emerged. In the evening, only days before their murder, the Nordby siblings had an encounter with an unfamiliar figure lurking within the confines of their garden. The identity of the stranger remained a mystery, and the attempt to uncover his identity was met with a cryptic explanation. The man claimed he was in search of a lost dog. Little did they suspect that this seemingly unremarkable encounter would lead to a series of horrifying incidents. A year later, on September 1st, 1992, the town was plunged once more into terror. This time, the unfortunate victim was Per Rod, a 71-year-old pensioner. A brutal blow from the iron bar left him defenseless, paving the way for a relentless barrage of stabbing. His lifeless body was then heartlessly discarded onto the compost pile within his own garden. As weeks faded into months, the absence of Per became a haunting riddle that plagued the community. The efforts of the police to locate him yielding little, and his whereabouts remained an unsolved puzzle. It wasn't until the month of March 1993 the two neighbors stumbled upon the disturbing discovery of the lifeless remains of Per. The wounds that marred his body bore similarities to the horrors that had befallen the Nordby siblings, a grim realization that a serial killer was at play. In the midst of this escalating nightmare, on December 23rd, 1992, the town was thrust into another harrowing incident. Carl Johan Hagavik, a 54-year-old manager of the local food store, met his demise. A gunshot had been fired to the back of his head, silencing his life forever. Yet strangely, Carl's money was left untouched while his bag contained 3 liters of milk was actually stolen. This left the investigation confused. The perpetrator's motive defies logic and reason. Why would the murderer kill this man over some milk? The unfolding tragedy transformed the Tistedalen area into an eerie ghost town, cloaked in a veil of apprehension and dread. The once thriving community became a landscape of shadows, with its denizens cowering in the face of the unseen menace. The murders of the Norway siblings, Per Rod and Carl Johan Hagevik, etched a permanent mark onto the town. Amid the relentless pursuit to find the perpetrator, a haunting question lingered: who could orchestrate such horrible acts of murder? The terror that had gripped Tistedalen was finally beginning to unravel as the police started to piece everything together. They quickly linked the 3 murder cases, as it appeared that the crimes were driven by motives of robbery. Additionally, evidence indicated that the same individual responsible for these murders were also involved in a recent bank robbery in Robbery near Haglund. Months of relentless investigation carried out in close collaboration with the National Criminal Investigation Service, the police was able to apprehend Roger Herbert Haglund on the 1st of May, 1993. Roger is a 55-year-old family man from the very heart of Tistedalen. The evidence that tied him to the crimes was strong, and his motives aligned with the profile they had since the beginning of the investigation. His alibi was flimsy and crumbled under scrutiny, as well as Roger's financial situation was poor, which potentially led him to his sinister motives. Roger's demeanor in the face of interrogation made it possible for the investigators to better understand who he truly was. His cold detachment stood out, a stark contrast to the depths of depravity that the evidence suggested. As Rogers was confronted with the evidence, he confessed to the unspeakable acts, only to recant his admission, weaving a disturbing narrative of manipulation and control. Rogers stated that he had been coerced by the notorious murderer and sex offender Edgar Antonsen, who had committed suicide that same year. According to him, Edgar compelled him into making a false confession for the crimes. Rogers' violent acts stretched beyond the borders of Norway. During the investigation, a connection to another brutal double murder in Sweden came to light that had happened earlier in the years. However, he was never brought to trial for these crimes. The wheels of justice chose not to turn in that direction, leaving the echoes of that particular horror unanswered. As the trial proceedings unfolded, the public prosecutor Lasse Coexisted masterfully portrayed Roger as a calculated and methodical individual capable of extinguishing innocent lives in cold blood and then methodically scouring their homes for material gain. Roger's resolve wavered, and he confessed in court, ultimately giving way to the overwhelming weight of the prosecution's case. On the 26th of April, 1994, the sentence was made. He ended up with 21 years behind bars, coupled with 5 years of preventative detention. After spending 13 years behind bars, Roger was granted parole, although his health had deteriorated significantly. He initially settled in Østfold, but later relocated to Strømmen. At the age of 73, Roger passed away on December 9th, 2011, marking the end of his life. As a chapter of this nightmarish tale closed, Tistedalen was left grappling with the residue of fear and sorrow that had woven itself into the very fabric of the community. The scars of the past would forever shape its landscape, a reminder of the darkness that could emerge from the most unsuspecting corners of humanity. Very comprehensive discussion notes.
I didn't have time to fix it, but basically, this case was there was multiple murders, but there was not a lot of information regarding all of the cases. The one that gave the most was the last one, which was which was Carl Johan Hagevik, and where we got more information of he got robbed of milk, but not really the money from his store, which I think was very puzzling, because they ended up saying that the guy who Roger was the culprit because he was famous for being a robber robber. I guess you say it like that.
Yeah,
Thief.
sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
But to be honest with you, I feel like if you're truly a robber kind of guy and you're poor, and like if you murder somebody, why didn't they take the money? Why was milk more important than money?
I think at least
or maybe it was like a fake, like, I'm gonna misdirect you guys.
What I'm thinking, I guess, is like maybe he didn't just simply steal money, he stole things that he needed.
So at that moment he was like, I need milk to make pancakes or what?
I
mean, the money, what like, don't you need the money?
I mean,
if you're poor,
I'm sure, but I think that's what the logic was. I'm just going to steal the things that I need, and unfortunately he was willing to kill over milk, at least. So, but also, like I said, it's hard to pass judgment because they didn't give a lot of clues on what the investigative process was. There wasn't a lot of details.
It was only like it was such a cold, like the way he murdered them was so cold-hearted. Yeah,
and then also he did say that he was coerced to confess, but then confessed in court. And this did take place in the 90s. And for anyone who's been listening to the podcast, you know, unfortunately, the 80s, 90s, 70s, confessions can be very unreliable because of certain practices that took place during those times. So am I saying this is like this person is innocent? I have no idea. No. But also based on the lack of information due to the investigation, even what we saw, what we can try and find online, it just seems like there's a lot of stuff missing that we don't know. We don't even know how they came to the conclusion that it was him.
But they did kind of like, they were like, oh, it's hinted that like, oh, he's poor and he's a robbery and he lives in Tistedalen. So therefore he is the culprit. That's basically how they determined. And then they started like investigate and interview him, and I guess during that time
that's when he confessed.
But they also said like the evidence tied to him, so I don't know what type of evidence they was trying that they did.
That's why I say it's tough too, because like we've heard that before. But they say, oh, the evidence
and the motives aligned. But yeah. I mean, like the motives can always align when it comes to robbery. So
yeah, because like it can be literally for anything. So like I said, we don't know what's true or what isn't true, and we're not trying to say that they're innocent. If they aren't innocent, then hey, it is what it is. But it just there's a lack of information.
But he did confess at court though, and he lied during their.
So remember the Viggo Christensen one?
I mean, yeah, but he was also mentally, he had issues.
He just had
mentally.
A lower IQ, but
I mean that too. But like
it was something similar.
He
that
was
happened.
Also drug infused and like coerced into saying things.
But the guy in this story did mention he was coerced.
Wait, he didn't have low IQ. He was studying other cases and just kind of incorporated that and guessing based on how they questioned him. So I don't think that's a low IQ thing to do.
I might be. I think you got confused with something else.
But he
did get coerced into confessing, which later ended up.
He wanted the attention as well.
No, that's not Viggo.
Yo, Viggo
Christensen. No.
No, wait. I am thinking about Thomas Quick. Yeah. My bad. I corrected you into wrong correction. I am so sorry. Viggo was the one who I believed.
He had a lower IQ,
and
but
he had the lower
else.
IQ. Yeah.
And then he was actually innocent.
Yes,
and then he was forced to confess.
Yes.
And he even confessed at one point in court, but then he retracted his statement.
Exactly.
When not during a retrial, but when later in the case during the trial, he had retracted and said he was coerced to confess.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like it's hard to tell with this case in particular because this sounds very similar to a lot of cases where people were forced to confess.
But they did like the expert, or what was his name? There was a guy. He was like Lasse, the prosecutor. He was portraying him to be this like methodical and calculated, like manipulative like guy.
But they did the same thing as well. That's their job.
I mean, I guess that's their job, but I feel like if the judge, because like the way he murdered the people, if it was him, was so brutal. So I mean, okay, you know what, you're right. I feel conflicted
because like there's nothing at least stated that was like absolutely him, and we don't have a ton of information. And just because the prosecutor was like, hey, he's a methodical killer, regardless if the person is innocent or not, and they know it or not, their job is still to convince them.
I remember why I wrote this in this this short little note on the discussion part. It's because the court described him as an ice cold psychopath, but there was no real. I couldn't find any evaluations or any experts nothing that actually did anything to determine if he was or was not. So this was only the court that felt that he was very like psychopath-ish.
Yes, which means it sounds like.
But I guess take this with a grain of salt.
Yeah, take this with a grain of salt. This sounds like this might have been circumstantial.
But it could have also been the truth as well.
It could have been.
We can't really say for sure, but I feel like I wanted to classify this as a murder mystery, but because I don't know if he's truly like, it's like we don't have anything to go from. But I also feel like okay, sorry, my bad. I get my thought process gone.
I'm dead. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt. It's possible that it truly is they had something and we just can't find it. But also, the person that I am is I can admit when something sounds similar to other cases of coerced confessions. So that way, it just comes off as like there's something missing. And this seems like they just went with the first person who they felt matched their profile. And that's just what it seems like. But I could be wrong. Take it with a grain of salt. Do not take what I said as my opinion as a fact. And just stuff to keep in mind and kind of keep the discussion flowing. But not a super long case. Overall opinion, as I've already said, it just seems like there's some missing information for me personally.
Me too.
So just to wrap it up on a good note, what kind of food are you feeling right now?
Big ass donut.
Krispy Kreme?
Yeah.
Krispy Kreme donut. Yeah, I remember when North Carolina, you like the Krispy Kreme donuts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they make their donuts fresh, good, delicioso. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope today's episode was informative. And once again, like I say on every episode, be safe out there. Remember, in any situation, whether it be male or female who's listening, if you ever get into a situation at all, period, fight for your life. I don't care if you're 10 years old. I don't care if you're 80 years old. Fighting for your life will increase your chances of surviving. Now, hopefully, you don't ever have to use any advice that I give you. Hopefully, but life can sometimes do that. But if that is the case, fight, my children, fight.
Rise, my children.
And
fight the evil.
I'm so done. And we will catch you in the next one. Stay hungry, my friend. Stay thirsty and stay healthy. Bye.
Bye-bye.